Hey everybody, welcome to the BizSTL podcast. I'm your host, Mike Miller. The BizSTL podcast is where we meet with leaders from around St. Louis to learn more about how they've built their businesses, what they see for the future of St. Louis's business scene, and how some of their greatest lessons just might serve as learning opportunities for your own career. This episode of the BizSTL podcast is presented by Third Degree Glass. At this point, you probably encounter generative AI just about every day in some form or another. Broadly defined, AI has been around for a long time, but the ways in which many companies are utilizing its potential, as well as how the public interacts with it, are new and ever-evolving. On today's episode, we'll talk with John Stamm, whose startup Hello Citizen uses artificial intelligence to help businesses, voters, government officials, and so many others stay on top of all the ideas and issues that are being discussed in local and state government. Hello Citizen takes all of that data and information being kicked around in the public record and turns it all into recaps that help inform readers about the workings of their local leaders. We'll learn more about the service as well as other ways AI can impact our lives in practical, helpful ways in just a moment. Hang tight, we'll be right back. Third Degree Glass is a working glass studio, gallery, and event venue in the Del Mar Maker District. Consider booking your next corporate event in one of their 3 stunning spaces. They can accommodate anything from a staff happy hour or off-site meeting to a large fundraiser event. Beyond booking the space, add on a live glass-blowing demo or hands-on experience for a memorable team-building activity. Plus, they offer custom glass awards and numerous corporate gift options. Stop by and check them out in person or visit their website at thirddegreeglass.com. Welcome back. Today's guest is John Stamm, founder of Hello Citizen, a St. Louis-based startup that uses AI to help people understand what exactly their local government officials are doing. It's a really interesting service, and we'll dive into how it works and how locals can use it in just a moment. But first, John, thanks so much for joining us today.
Really glad to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, before we hop into the topic at hand, let's get to know you a little bit better. Something we do with every guest here on the BizSTL podcast is we start with a round of rapid-fire questions.
Great.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, John, how do you like to start your day? Is there something that you do each morning to get off on the right foot?
Coffee, number one, but I think it's actually one of the better parts of my day is I start by hanging out with my son. I get him out of bed, and then we kind of wrestle around and play a little bit and get him ready for school. He's 1 year old, and getting him into the outfit is also a little bit of wrestling, but not quite it's always a fun challenge getting him ready, but I do enjoy starting my day that way.
Probably a good way to get the brain going. Probably a lot of figuring out how to do this.
Lots of singing goofy songs, and yeah.
That's great. How about a favorite restaurant in St. Louis? Anywhere you and the family like to go?
I really like to go to Winslow's Table, actually. So it's like the perfect mix of really good food, and it's a very accessible environment, and they don't mind when we make a mess at the table as a family. So that's one of my favorite spots for sure.
One of mine favorite too. They just rolled out a few months ago like a Mediterranean wrap for brunch.
I haven't tried that.
Very good.
All right, that's on my list now.
Highly recommended. Favorite book?
Favorite book, East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I actually started reading a lot of science fiction though at the beginning of the pandemic. I kind of wanted to check out of reality, and so I have a few on that list, but East of Eden is still top for me.
How about a favorite podcast? Anything you like to listen to?
I mean, besides this one, Mike. I'm not a huge podcast guy, actually, so I don't have a ton of recommendations there. I do occasionally listen to 99% Invisible, which is like a design-focused, would be a quick way to say it, but lots of interesting content there, and about stuff I know nothing about, so I enjoy that one.
I love that podcast. It's something we put on whenever we're doing a road trip. It's just something to just sort of take your mind off the road and really think about. It's a great, really good one.
Yeah.
What about a life hack? Anything you do to make life just a little bit easier for you?
So broadly, I try to end up in places that are odd to me that I don't know anything about. So like an example is like a tea ceremony, going to a any ceremony, and then I learned a lot about tea and, got into tea and ended up down this whole tea path, or art shows, or any of the festivals in Tower Grove Park that I know absolutely nothing about, you stumble upon, and then there's this whole entire subculture that you can explore. I really like showing up in places that are outside of my knowledge area, and I find to make a lot of really good connections there, and then they'll pop up 2 years later, and I'll see someone from that tea ceremony. And so that helps me a lot, actually, especially in a place like St. Louis, because it's a big, small city. So, everyone's one or two connections removed. And so those folks that you meet end up popping up other places.
I hate to say it, like it's a great way to network, but it kind of is. It's
It
a kind of
kind
way
of
to
is.
build your network, meet new people.
Yeah, but it's a fun way to do it. It's not, because again, I'm learning a lot about, like, trying to remember what the group in Tower Grove was, but it was bizarre. I hadn't heard anything of it, and there's all these great folks who are deep into this subculture I know nothing about. So.
Well, I'm going to start stumbling around parks and trying to find
There
some
you go.
interesting spaces, and I'll let you know how that works for me. It's really cool though.
Yeah.
And last question for you. Is there anything you recently crossed off your bucket list? Anything you've been meaning to do for a long time and finally found the ways and time to do it?
Recently, I have a lot of things on my bucket list. Like I was thinking about it. I really want to swim in a bioluminescent bay. Or like see one of those migrations of like millions and millions of birds. I think there's one in like eastern Iowa. That's on the top of my list, but I've been so focused on, again, I have a 1-year-old son at home, so I haven't crossed off many bucket list items. I guess having a son was on my bucket list, so I'd include that.
That's an important one. That's
Yeah.
a good one. That's a great one. Well, John, let's dive into our discussion. Hello Citizen is a service that uses AI to basically digest government meetings and distill them down to some of the most important pieces of information that someone would want to know. Anyone understands the, I guess you could say, monotony of government meetings. It's probably you, as someone who used to work in local government. You have a super interesting background, having recently served as the chief of staff for Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas. How did those years working in local government maybe shape your desire to launch a project like Hello Citizen?
Yeah. So like you said, I was the chief of staff, so got to be the number 2. And one of my roles was to kind of know generally everything that was going on, so I could help kind of direct traffic. And so there's about 80 boards and commissions, which is about average for a city of that size. And I had to keep track, again, of not just the agenda items, but I needed to know what people were discussing in these meetings. And I personally obviously couldn't go to these meetings. So I would go to what I could, but I'd send staff, I'd send interns, they'd take notes, they'd say this elected official didn't like this part. And, we tried to synthesize that all, but in the end, most of the information ends up falling through the cracks. So fast forward a little bit, I'm in St. Louis, I'm building an AI company, and I actually discovered this use case for AI, which is, again, digesting all these meetings and creating these actionable insights from that huge mountain of data. And basically, I built a tool that I needed as chief of staff that just didn't exist yet because the AI wasn't far enough along, a number of other reasons. But I built the tool that I needed. And now I use that, again, to digest meetings from cities across the country. And again, we're delivering these valuable insights. And it came from my experience as chief of staff of simply being unable to keep track of everything that was going on in government meetings. And it was my job, again, to know all of this. So
I gave a brief overview of Hello
Yeah.
Citizen at the top of the show, but can you maybe just walk us through how it actually works, both, I guess, on the technology side, on the AI side, but also from the user interface side?
Sure.
How does it actually work, and what can people get from it?
Yeah. So we take this mountain of government data, these meeting conversations. We're starting to build in the actual legislation text, sometimes agenda items when we can grab them. And we're putting it into what we're building to be the world's largest database of government meetings. And then we use AI to pull insights out of that. So our users, for example, if you're a architecture and engineering company and you want to know what states around the country are putting more money into their universities to build new dorms, if that's your area of business, we can pull all that data for you, and you don't have to spend 80 hours a month watching the Board of Regents of Kansas. You can instead just go to hellocitizen.ai, and we'll just give you that information right there, and you'll see where the information you need is occurring. So it's a little bit like finding a needle in a haystack, but again, it's one of the things that AI is great at. It's taking a mountain of data, finding that needle in the haystack, building connections across the things. And so we're building these insights for our customers. And so on the interface, again, you can read dozens of summaries of meetings that are happening all across the country. You can, we're actually building out this function, but you can ask it, again, tell me what cities in the Midwest are giving more money to affordable housing right now if I'm an affordable housing real estate developer. And again, we're building it so that you'll get a list of here's 12 cities that have discussed affordable housing in the past month.
It's so fascinating because, coming to it from a journalism point of view, there's a crushing amount of data and information out there that comes out of these meetings, but it's hard to know exactly where to start sometimes and how to find things. But it seems like a service like this kind of, like you said, streamlines it and makes it a little bit easier to sort of dive into and pick through.
Yeah, I've had some interesting conversations with journalists actually, who often will sit through these meetings themselves, hundreds of hours at City Hall, when you really are honing in on a very specific portion of the meeting, but you don't know when that's going to occur. You have to pay attention pretty closely to figure out what the actual value is. So we can at least at Hello Citizen kind of wave a flag and say, hey, here's the interesting bit, dig here. The other fun part about building this has been when I first started putting the system together, the AI didn't have a good understanding of what was important. It thought all the conversations were equally important. So it would, at the beginning of these meetings, there's often these honorary resolutions saying, happy birthday, Mike, or something similar. And so the AI, the title of the summary would be something like Mike Miller's birthday celebrated at City Hall, or, something similar. And so I had to train it to say, all right, skip those kind of honorary resolutions. Here's what the meat of the meeting is. And in the end, we've gotten a lot better. We've already used more advanced models that have better results. So we're pleased with progress so far.
That is also so interesting to me, how you work inside of these models and really build them to do what you're trying to make it do. Well, one thing I've seen come up in news stories in the last few months is the topic of AI hallucinations. And I think in short, the easiest, quickest way to explain that is an AI hallucination is something where your algorithm, or the algorithm, invents things or anticipates things that might not be real or might not be true and presents them as facts. It seems like it could be a very serious limitation for AI services that are doing mutation for. Is there anything you've had to do to maybe guard against that or build in?
So it is a definite issue and it's getting better and better. The thing we've done is kind of limited the way our different AI systems pull data. So it's trained on this, giant corpus of data from the entire internet. But then when I'm asking one of the AI systems I use to create new information based off of these government meetings, I basically am saying, don't look inside your training data and pull new information out, but really focus on facts that happened in this new data from government meetings that I'm giving you. There's a number of different ways to do that, but we basically kind of limited its scope of what it's looking at and kind of have it cite its sources in some ways. But the interesting thing about hallucinations is that it's actually for this generative AI like ChatGPT that we're talking about so often lately, it's actually hallucinations are kind of, in a sense, when AI is working because we don't necessarily want it to just regurgitate the information that it's learned. We want it to create something a little bit new. So if I say summarize the Constitution in Taylor Swift lyrics, right? If that doesn't exist anywhere, I want it to hallucinate and be a little bit creative and create something new. But the problem is, like you said, when it presents those as facts and says the Constitution was written by Taylor Swift, that's when we get into an issue. And again, we're getting better at that. So the other bit of advice that I have for everyone is whenever it's a kind of a black and white fact, true or false, one specific example for our use case is when it's like a dollar amount, say $160 million contract versus a $60 million contract. We always advise our customers, double check that number when it's a true or false kind of fact, because these generative AI systems aren't amazing at that yet. But again, they're getting better and better.
The whole technology is seemingly getting better and better. And I think this is episode 10 of the Biz STL podcast. And it feels like with almost all of my previous 9 guests, we've talked about AI in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about the AI conversation, it's clearly something that everyone's talking about. If they're not talking about it, they're probably thinking about it. But AI has been around for a long time. It's not a new technology. We're just thinking about new ways we can use it. Along those lines, as someone who is sort of in the weeds of it, are there ways that we can maybe think about AI more practically?
Yeah.
Anything we can do as organizations, businesses, or even just everyday people to implement and use AI to make life just a little bit easier, more convenient.
Sure. So one of the fun things I like to say is that AI, there's actually no uniform definition of what AI is, right? So when Netflix recommends me a movie, is that an algorithm? Is that AI? The line between those two is pretty fuzzy. And in some sense, it doesn't necessarily matter a ton what the actual definition is, but the change that we're seeing now is that we have these generative AI systems, these things that create all these new, I guess, content in some forms. And so the best way to use that is to, one, kind of understand the tool that we have now. So these chat GPTs or some of these image generators, again, they're pretty good, especially these chat GPT large language models are very good at digesting tons of information and boiling it down. So summarization is one of the best things, best use cases for it. So one piece of advice I always give people is when you have to work through a giant mountain of information, say it's government meetings in my case, use one of these generative AI tools and just put it in there, see what it comes back with. One thing that I personally use it, just very practical, I use AI for is I'll kind of give it like a stream of consciousness idea that I'm formulating, and I'm trying to figure out how to really make it refined. And I'll give the stream of consciousness to the AI, and it'll come back with, here's a bullet point summary of what you just told me. And I'll look at it and say, wow, that was way more comprehensible than what I gave you. So anyway, that's one very small practical thing that I do. But overall, just try to use these tools. Just play with them a little bit and see what they're what they make possible. Again, the one fun example I mentioned earlier, ask it to summarize some dense text in the form of your favorite artists or, something like that.
It's interesting. I've gotten more, I've found more ways to use AI to my liking. It feels like when this first started to become a more widespread conversation, where we started talking about AI maybe last year or so ago, my initial thoughts are customer service. This is going to be the future of customer service, and maybe it will, but I've never had a really great experience with AI. But as you've said, I've sort of played around with some new services, new ways to actually use the technology. I mean, when I record interviews, I have a program that basically will go through the conversation and figure out how to summarize it for, notes, and figure out how to organize all of the information that I've just received over the last 45 minutes or an hour. It makes it a lot easier. It's a new way of thinking about doing my job.
Yeah. I love, again, kind of note-taking use cases is one I really like as well. And yeah, just keep playing with tools, I think, is the best way to really get familiar with what it can do and kind of understand what it's not good at. Again, we mentioned hallucinations. Sometimes these generative AI systems are not great at giving facts. They're getting a lot better, and who knows, by this time next year, it might be just fine at that, but just play with them.
It's all moving pretty quickly. Well, you've been moving pretty quickly to get this company up and running. And one of the things I wanted to touch on before we get you out of here is starting a company in St. Louis. I've talked to leaders of companies of all sizes, but one thing I haven't really touched on so far is just what it's like to launch a startup in St. Louis. We obviously have incubators. We have a support system around the region to help organizations, like the size of a Hello Citizen, get up and running and really get launched. But what's it like getting started in a region like St. Louis? Are there ways maybe that we could even better support startups in St. Louis?
Yeah, I'd say the St. Louis community is very supportive of each other. So actually, the piece that ran in St. Louis Magazine, after that came out, I had some folks reach out to me proactively and have asked me to speak at conferences, and new clients have found me through that just because they said, hey, we're a St. Louis company, you're a St. Louis company, I like what you're doing, I'm going to support you. So we've gotten some new clients that way just because, again, St. Louis supporting itself. I'd say building a company here, it's access to capital is probably one of the trickier parts that separate kind of a St. Louis from one of the coastal cities, but we have great programs like Arch Grants, or the Missouri Technology Corporation also makes some funding available. And the other great thing about building in St. Louis is that, again, a lot of us know each other. So I get together with a lot of tech founders and grab a beer, and we commiserate and talk about our customers and our plans and our investors. And we kind of, again, help each other as much as we can. So it does have that very supportive environment that you'd expect. It really does come through in the St. Louis community as well.
That's all really great stuff, John. This has been really interesting, and best of luck with the future of Hello Citizen. And thank you again for making time with us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thanks again to John Stamm for joining us on this episode of the pod. As I mentioned, AI is certainly not a new technology, but the ways in which organizations and startups such as John's are incorporating it into their processes and offerings is really fascinating to watch, and certainly something to continue following in the coming months and years. That'll do it for this episode of the BizSTL podcast. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. Stay connected with us by subscribing to our BizSTL leadership newsletter at stlmag.com/newsletters and follow along on Instagram at St. Louis Mag. If you loved what you heard, show us some love by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen. We appreciate your support and can't wait to have you join us again. Until next time, I'm Mike Miller.